What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. We're gonna do something a little different today and do a little editing walkthrough. I get a ton of DMs and comments about please have an editing tutorial. This is not gonna be really a tutorial though. It's more of a walkthrough. And I say that because I'm not breaking down Lightroom and each slider and telling you how this one works, how that one works more so. I will give a little commentary of my thought process on why I do an adjustment, but it's not really a in-depth tutorial on Lightroom, how to edit a picture. This is just showing you guys how my style becomes my style. So yeah, not a whole lot. We're gonna just break down probably one of my favorite images of Chicago and go from there. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, guys, so here we are in Lightroom. I use Lightroom Classic. I have used the normal Lightroom, what is it? Creative Cloud or something like that. I just prefer this version. You can do really anything you want in both versions though. This is just my preference. So starting, honestly, just start from top to bottom. I always kind of figure out the composition. Is my composition good here? Do I need to straighten it, level it? This one does need some work. So the crop, sometimes just auto it, see what it does. Didn't do a bad job there. Still, obviously you can tell something is just a little off with the photo. My angle, see how right here, you can tell with the lines, they're going kind of up to the right a little bit versus just straight up the middle of the photo, which I don't have a problem with, but that wasn't intentional. My intentions were to get a clean, straight image. So you can go down to the transform tab here and just kind of play with this tab here to kind of straighten out the lines a little bit. Now you do lose some of the image by doing that, but it's not a big deal here. We can fix that so it looks a little better. So going back to the top, like I said, we're just gonna go, I usually always obviously go from top to bottom. So exposure doesn't look too bad here. We'll go there. Highlights, we'll bring down the highlights just a tad. Shadows, we're gonna leave where it's at. Blacks, I usually always bring down, just because I like that richness that sometimes the camera, the raw file from the Sony cameras kind of just add like kind of a wash, in my opinion, to the image. So to get that added richness and realistic look of how this scene really looked, I think I always bring the blacks back down. Whites typically go up. And now that I'm looking at this, the temperature is not really how I like it. So I'll make that a little bit cooler, like that. It's a pretty good start. I'll play with the crop here a little bit. That's okay, we'll roll with that. In the presence tab here, I always decrease the clarity. And like I said, these Sony cameras, really any mirrorless camera today, can be overly sharp, and that really shows in the image. So I'll just do a negative clarity. I don't usually go past -15, so -13 I'm okay with. By this point, I usually keep working down, but I'm gonna start to do a little masking here. So I'll bring a radial gradient over the top here, just kind of accentuate some of that haze and glow that was there from the recent rain. Oops. So we'll go down here, add some dehaze. Not a ton, just a little. And if it's too much, like, oh, that's too much, you can just bring the highlights down a little bit. Looking pretty good so far. Now the tone curve is something I use heavily. Once I found that out, how to really use this tool and what it really does to the image, I mean, it's a no-brainer. So always just make 3 points. You can make 2 points too. You really don't need that one. If you don't, it's not necessary really, but you can put it there. Points I don't know what that was. Something just, it was like an overlay. What's going on here? Weird. Okay. So 3 points, highlights. Not going to bring the highlights up a ton because I already have the highlights are already blown out here, as you can see. So we're not really going to jam that up there, right? We're just slightly. And then we'll bring the blacks down, and then we're going to lift the shadows. So already you can tell by just from this, that small adjustment, how a richness and depth you get out of an image. So we'll just do the before and after, right? No tone curve, tone curve. I mean, it's such a powerful tool. The other colors here, the RGB colors, I sometimes go into the red channel, and a lot of other people do like to do an S curve on this one as well. But I like to actually just bring down the highlights, put them in the blue channel a little bit here. So you can tell what it does. Obviously bring it all the way down. It's a little bit too aggressive, but just slightly enough to cast a little blue hue on those highlights. Moving down, let's play with I kind of just hop back and forth with the gradients or the masking here. So we're gonna do a little linear gradient from the bottom. Actually, we're gonna start with the side here, because my images typically are about center focus. You want to guide the viewer's eye to look, right? In this particular photo, it's shot on my 16-35 at 16 mil. So it's a wide photo. So it has that kind of like warping on the sides to kind of get your viewer's eye to look right in the center here at this Chicago theater sign. So we're just gonna add a linear gradient on the side and bring down the shadows just a little bit. I always start with the shadows instead of exposure. Exposure is pretty aggressive at first. So I'll start with the shadows, see what that does, see how that looks. Let's get this back out. Oops. And then if that's not enough, then we'll go to the shadows, and then you can feather it. You know, if you don't like how that looks, let's leave it like that. And then we'll do a radial gradient in the center of the image. Still, again, drawing that viewer's eye to look somewhere, you know, like you got to have intention of where you want your viewer's eye to look. So I'll bring up the shadows just a little bit in the center. Before, after, not a ton, just a little bit. Moving on, let's see what else you want to do. We can do a linear gradient from the bottom. A lot of times it's experimentation, guys. It's just, there's so many tools within Lightroom, use them all, you know, see what it does to your photo, just play with it. So we'll do a little linear gradient from the bottom here. So later on, I'll probably, this guy with the umbrella, it's great for the scene here. But there's obviously a lot of distractions here. So there's this guy here, there's that guy. There's obviously a ton of people walking around. So we can probably clean this up later in Photoshop, and I'll show you guys how I remove some of these distractions. If my composition is good, if my lighting is good that I'm happy with, I'll move on to the colors now. Now, colors are huge because every color in the photo plays a part and plays a role with how the final image looks. Some colors work well with each other, some don't. You know, opposite colors attract each other. So like obviously the famous teal and orange look great. Even blue and orange look really good too. What else? Red and green look really nice together. Purple and yellow, anything opposite looks really nice. So in this photo, we have orange, red, blue, obviously some more blue in the sky here, a little green there. So I take out a lot of colors that just distract from the main colors. So this green, we'll play with that, see what that does. Can probably take that out. Trees, see, you really don't need that. Let's see what else. Aqua, what is that gonna do? Aqua's not a huge aqua play in this one. Blue, obviously there's some blues. So let's play with a little blue and change the hue of that blue down more to the aqua. Just a little bit. Let's see what that does. Yeah, his umbrella is huge. So we're gonna, because of that umbrella is, you know, it's really making that photo stand out, we're gonna increase the luminance on that. Let's see. Got some more blue down there. Let's see, my hue didn't really, oh, it's because I was on the wrong channel. I'm like, why didn't that do anything? I was on the aqua. We need to go down to the blue one here and change that blue more toward the aqua channel. And now you can see how before, after, see how those colors just work. That orange coming from the sign mixed with that blue or aqua that I changed it to, it really creates a pleasing set of colors. Luminance is huge, definitely for my style. I always mess with the luminance. Typically in oranges, I'll bring the luminance up a little bit. Hue is not a huge channel of mine. Honestly, this rare occasion, I typically don't even do this, but in this one it worked out. But on the yellow channel, I typically change that yellow to more of an orange. So we can bring this down. There is some yellow in the image here, not a ton, but there is, so we can just make it more orange. And then we'll bring that up a little bit. So already, guys, we have a pretty nice image so far. This is before, after, before, after. I like to get like a really solid foundation and just, if you can, before the color grading, like color grading is just like a icing on the cake, I guess. If you don't have really a good foundation, a good image before color grading, I mean, sometimes in my opinion, my experience, it's just not a great photo to work with. You got to have a good foundation and a good image before color grading. Color grading is just like to put your own spin and touch on your image, just kind of like an icing on the cake, you know? So I think we have a good foundation. I wish there was just a little bit more. Let's just do another mask here, just down here. Bring out the highlights a little bit. I like that. And then we'll go back to the masking here. I can actually bring it up. Excuse me. So now I'm looking at it. Do I want to move on to color grading yet? I think I do. So let's do that. Color grading, we're going to start with the highlights. I always add blue in my highlights. I just like that look of a hazy blue in the highlights. So I'll start, just kind of play around like that. That's too aggressive. So I'll kind of bring it down. Bring it down like that. And before, after, not a huge difference, just really subtle. Midtones, I tend to do them in the orange side. Yellowish orange. You can come back to that. Let's see if I like that. And then we'll play with shadows. I don't usually use the shadows on the color grading side just because it makes it sometimes just too overpowering, and it creates like this like blue wash, or whatever color you choose here. It creates like a wash over the photos because shadows are very dominant in a lot of pictures. But in this scenario, I think I'll just not even mess with those. I'm gonna leave that alone. What are we gonna do next? Denoise, that feature I really don't mess with a ton. You know, this image was shot at ISO 400, so it's just really not needed to remove noise. Sometimes that added noise though can really add an extra layer, kind of like a nostalgic or film-like vibe to your photo, that added grain. But obviously it's not needed for this one. Sharpening, I don't do anything with sharpening. I think the Sony cameras, especially the A7 IV with 33 megapixels, is plenty sharp, so I don't mess with that. Removing chromatic aberration, yes, that's something I probably should do more of. It's just a box that you can check. You know, these lenses are so good that you won't even really notice it, but you can leave that unchecked or checked. Enable profile corrections. I shot this at 16 mil, so it does have that natural kind of warping. The lines will look more curved instead of straight, and the natural vignetting of the lens as well. So if you check that, it will correct all that. But I kind of like it how it is without the box checked. We messed with that transform tool in the beginning, straightening those lines. And lens blur, I don't do anything with. More effects down here, post-crop vignetting. Some photos I will do a vignetting on, most likely the nighttime shots. Daytime shots, it's a little bit too aggressive and too obvious. It's just not necessary in my opinion or my style. But that's it. This is camera calibration down here. This is a little bit advanced even for me here. Like I don't really mess with this. Sometimes if I really can't dial in the colors that I'm looking for, I'll come down to the calibration and I'll just literally play around with the sliders. Really not knowing what I'm doing down here. But if you just play with the sliders and just tweak a little bit of the tint or hue in the red, you'll get that color you want. And that's really what Lightroom is about. That's how you learn over time. The more and more you shoot and the more you play around with this, you realize what these fine adjustments can do to your image and how it can affect their overall outcome and look and that vibe that you're going for, especially in the tone curve. I mean, the tone curve is huge for just adding depth and richness. Like I mentioned, like let's just toggle this off, right? No tone curve. And then with the tone curve, it just adds a really nice richness and vibe to your photo. But that's really about it, guys. I just wanted to do a walkthrough, show you guys how I got my final shot here. If you come down here, how it was imported, import, and then auto straighten was the first thing done. Great foundation to start with. Like I said before, I think to really have a good image, you have to have a good foundation to start with, even before color grading. Like if you don't have that, if you don't really like your photo before color grading, just move on to something else, get a different photo, come back to it maybe. But you got to have a good foundation for sure. Step one. And then you can add your color grading and get that moody vibe or that palette that you're looking for. But I plan to do more of these in the future. So stay tuned for more of these. I think I've been doing YouTube since November and this is the first one. So I think it was about time to have a walkthrough of how I edit some of my shots. I hope you guys enjoyed. Drop a comment, like, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.